Hello, and welcome to this episode of Kidneys in the Kitchen. I'm your host, Melissa Prest, a registered dietitian nutritionist with the National Kidney Foundation of Illinois. And with me today is Melanie Betts.
Hi,
I just
Melissa.
lazily threw my hand over there. Melanie works with people with CKD, not on dialysis.
Correct, yes.
And you've been on a few of these before. You're
I
like
have,
an old
yes,
pro.
I'm an old pro. Hi, everyone, again.
So today we are talking about building a better breakfast,
Yes.
which I think is, as they always say, the most important meal of the
Right.
day.
I mean, I think all meals are important.
Of
but
course. Of course.
yes. I am someone who personally sort of struggle. I'm not generally especially hungry in the morning,
Yep.
and so I have to really make an effort to make sure that I fuel my day with breakfast.
Yes.
So. Yeah.
Absolutely. So I know, and we were kind of chatting a little bit about this episode before you came on and kind of talking through that there's a lot of just popularity out there in terms of prolonging that fast overnight, which breakfast actually just means break the fast, right? Break fast. So I know that that's something that I think is very popular in addition to higher protein meals in general, and sometimes just really high protein breakfasts. And so I think some of those can be a challenge or concern for people with chronic kidney disease and or diabetes. So I don't know if that's something that maybe you've encountered a little bit with the people that you work with.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I have a lot of patients that are on a lot of different protein shakes and supplements. Maybe that's what was recommended to them, maybe at the gym, or maybe that's what they found online. And for some patients, those maybe could be appropriate, but for most patients, especially with CKD who are not on dialysis, you actually want to sort of cut back how much protein you're eating. And so one of those protein shakes can easily have 75% of the amount of protein you should have in the whole day.
Right.
So you really have to be careful with those types of high protein breakfast things.
Right. And so what are some good options that people can include for breakfast?
Yeah. Well, my general rule is I always want to make sure that every breakfast does have some protein, a little bit of protein, some sort of whole grain, and also some sort of fruit and vegetable. I think just making sure that each food group is sort of represented there is a really great way to help you build your own healthy breakfast. Lately, one of my favorites has been avocado toast, which I know is very trendy, but it's so good. And so I have been just toasting one piece of whole grain bread, and I'll spread a quarter to a half an avocado, depending on how hungry I am. Just fry an egg and then top it with whatever vegetables and maybe a little bit of cheese that I have around the house. And that's been my favorite lately.
Go-to breakfast, yeah. I actually recently made some avocado toast, and I was
What
like,
did you put on it?
it's like, how do you make avocado toast? Like, it is as simple as I think it is,
Yeah,
right?
it literally is.
Yeah. So I just did a little bit of like cheese on and a whole grain bread, and then I put the avocado, and I did some garlic powder and paprika.
Nice.
On top of it.
Sort of a savory.
Yeah.
Yeah. And my other favorite one is adding, so the avocado, of course, and then just a little bit of pistachio and a drizzle of honey, which is very good too.
That sounds good.
Yes.
That does sound delicious. I'm just trying to think of some other things that I know you had mentioned vegetables, and I think sometimes people don't necessarily always think of vegetables as something to include at breakfast.
Right.
But obviously omelets might be one way that someone might be kind of used to seeing a vegetable in their breakfast, but what are some other options or ideas?
I think maybe doing, so an omelet, or this is sort of the same thing, but feels completely different, is doing like an egg scramble or something along those lines. Honestly, I think it's a great way to get rid of whatever remnants of vegetables you have left over from dinner the week or night before or whatever. So just kind of throw those together. Later in this episode, you'll see us making an overnight oats, which is sort of a sweet version, but I've seen a lot of overnight oat savory versions too, where they add vegetables instead of fruit and sort of the sweet things. So that's maybe another way that you could get in vegetables.
Yeah, and actually so the overnight oats I've seen like milk or water, but I've actually seen cottage cheese as something else that you could do with your overnight oats, would be another
instead of the milk.
Yeah, as another
that's a great idea.
Protein, kind of savory, a little bit of that tartness.
Yeah.
So I haven't tried it yet, but I have definitely I'm like, I should try like some overnight oats with cottage cheese, because I know for me, some of the things with breakfast is, part of it is increasing that satiety or feeling full longer so that it's not like you're ravenous an hour or so
I'm
later.
Starving. I want to eat my hand at 10 a.m.
Yes. And I feel like just oatmeal like hot cooked oatmeal sometimes makes me feel that way, but like overnight oats seems to really sustain me longer. So I don't know if it's just that combination of having the protein from the milk in it, or if you did like yogurt, or if you add things like we have flax seeds here. You could also do like chia seeds. So sometimes those also help the, that
extra
hunger,
fiber.
that extra fiber.
Yeah.
So I do know that helps.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's just way more exciting. I'm someone who is not at all excited about just a plain bowl of oatmeal. Yeah, it's not exciting to me at all. But when you add all this fun stuff, it's a completely different meal. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
What are some of your, I know you said breakfast is sometimes a challenge for you, and obviously other people are kind of in a rush to do things in the morning too. So what are some of either your go-tos that you like, or things that you might work with other people about and suggest for kind of those quick kind of breakfasts?
Yeah. So usually if I am actually going to work, I don't have time to make my avocado toast with my eggs. So usually I will pack myself just a little container of yogurt. So I use normal cow's yogurt, but you could work with your dietitian and see if you wanted to do any of the milk alternatives. And then I just top it with a whole bunch of berries and a little bit of granola and call it a day. And that's my usual Monday through Friday breakfast.
Okay. I like it.
Yeah.
And I think some other things, I know because I've been working on updating the cookbook, and Melanie is also, you were working on a cookbook as well for University of Chicago. So some of the things that I was looking at was, you kind of talk about that scrambler, so kind of that, so doing it with like tofu as opposed to eggs.
Instead of eggs, yes.
And so that's something also you could kind of make and just take with you and reheat, or like egg muffins.
Like muffins, yep.
Yep, the egg muffin tin. So that's like a really easy, I've seen all different, like a French toast, like muffin thing.
Yep.
Baked oatmeal in something like that too.
Yep. That's a great way to add in fruit in there. You could add apples or maybe some nuts even to get some extra fiber in there.
And sometimes I think bars are just kind of good to grab and go.
Easy peasy.
Yeah. So those are pretty easy too. And you can actually, I know that there's different like brands out there for that, but there's a lot of actually just recipes that you can find online too that makes
there's recipes everywhere.
Easy to like just make kind of those, like the fruit, like even just a couple of ingredients, like a fruit and like some kind of nut butter,
and an oat,
and like an oat, and you can just kind of swish it in like a bar pan, or and you kind of cut them and
like a bar cookie.
Yeah,
basically.
yeah, very easy.
Yeah,
nothing hard about that.
Yeah. And honestly, there's also nothing wrong with just having a piece of peanut butter toast and an apple. It doesn't have to be fancy if you don't want it to be.
Yeah. I think the main thing is just making sure that, like you said before, like making sure there's some protein in it. We don't want necessarily someone just to have some toast and butter and tea, which I think a lot of times as people get older, sometimes there's either, like you said, appetite's not really there, or, maybe just it's the quick and easy thing to do. So maybe instead of some butter, just a little bit of peanut butter. It gives you a little bit of fat and protein.
Yep.
So it's a little bit of, gives you a little more bang for your buck, I think,
absolutely.
Than
so
butter.
For breakfast, the proteins that you could get are those nut butters or nuts if it's an oatmeal or something like that. Obviously, eggs would work. That's a great healthy source of protein. Yogurt, the flaxseed or chia seed has a little bit of protein in it. So lots of different options.
Yeah, and I think like beans, you could use that with beans.
You could do sort of like a Mexican themed egg thing with some beans. That'd be fun. Yeah,
something like that. That's always good.
Yeah.
And we kind of talked a little bit, but are there other foods you can think of that maybe people don't necessarily think of as a breakfast food that they might add or include?
I mean, honestly, breakfast can be anything.
It really can. It can.
You can have leftovers for dinner, or the leftovers that you had for dinner the night before. It really doesn't have to be eggs and bacon and toast, right? Like, it can be truly anything.
Yep.
I went through a phase where I just sauteed a whole bunch of vegetables. I did kale and onions and tomatoes and whatever I had around, and I just threw that in a Tupperware. I broke it up into Tupperwares and threw one egg on it in the morning, and just that was my breakfast every day. So you really can get creative with it and make it exciting.
And breakfast can be dinner too. Doesn't even have to be.
That's true. You can have eggs for dinner too.
Yes.
No rules.
No rules. Pancakes for dinner.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's something too. You can. I know there's some pancake batters that have added protein powder. So that's something else. You can always make pancakes with a little extra protein powder in them, and whole grain flour or a whole wheat flour at least, to make it a little bit higher in fiber, heartier. A little bit of protein fills you up.
Yes.
Yeah. And there is even, I have this little mini like waffle maker that was less than $15, and I love it. It makes like the perfect size waffle that you would
For
get
one
like a
person.
frozen, frozen waffle size, like
That's awesome.
normal waffle size, and it's great. And I do like some of those like mixes with the high protein batter, and I do like a peanut butter on it, and
sounds great.
It's been really good. Yeah, I don't eat eggs, so I'm always trying to find other
that makes
protein options than eggs.
For sure.
So I might do some like nut butters or some type of seeds, like the yogurt or milk. But I don't know what other protein options if someone's not really into eggs or like animal-based proteins. What kind of other things?
Using just whole grains as your protein for breakfast, I think, could work too. I haven't tried any of them, but I've seen a lot of recipes for waffles that your waffle maker reminded me of sort of some savory waffle options. So you could make waffles with these different different flours, or with like maybe a quinoa waffle mixed in there. That's a great source of protein.
Right.
Have you tried any of those? I know
I
I've seen like even potato cheese waffles, like all sorts of crazy stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I have not yet. But yeah, quinoa is definitely something that is a good protein source. It's obviously it's a grain, but it's also a protein source. And so a lot of the whole grains are going to also have just protein. That's a plant-based protein. Yep. And I haven't tried. So I do tofu a lot. So I think you can use like the firm tofu to do like a tofu scramble. You can do like a stir fry with it, which is kind of like a scramble, right?
Absolutely.
But I think you can use the firm for the scramble. Usually you would think like soft, but it calls for firm in the recipes. So
I made a butternut squash tofu Indian curry. This isn't really breakfast, but you could have had it for breakfast.
It could be
I made it for dinner, but yes, so that was a fun way to use tofu.
Yeah.
A little bit different.
Yeah. What if someone's going out to like brunch or to breakfast in the morning with their family? What types of things would you kind of guide a patient towards as good choices at the restaurant?
Yeah, restaurants are always hard because you really have no idea what's in there. But I do think there's some things to keep in mind as general rules when you are eating out. Generally avoiding anything crispy because that's going to have quite a bit of extra salt in that breading, and also fat and calories in that breading as well. And just avoiding sauces or asking for those sauces on the side, and then you can use just a little bit, and you sort of have more control over what goes on your food. And depending on the type of restaurant that you're going to, you can even do your homework before you go and look up the nutrition information and see how much salt is actually in things. So then you kind of have a game plan when you get there, instead of sort of flying by the seat of your pants when you get there.
Right. And I know some things we talked about in another episode was kind of looking up, you can look up various items on like the USDA website. That is where a lot of the nutrient content and information actually comes from. It's from the database that the USDA, USDA.gov is the website, and that is what they kind of get a lot of the nutrition facts information. Yeah. So even if the restaurant maybe doesn't have nutrition facts, you could always go on there and just look up like what's in a pancake, or what's in like a typical sausage, what would be in this. So you can kind of have a ballpark idea, to kind of look that stuff up too.
Absolutely. They just redid their website, and it's a lot more user-friendly, so go check it out.
Check it out.
Yes.
And I like in general just kind of perusing the menu before I go somewhere anyways, just to kind of see what the options are, and you kind of think ahead, because one of the things is just biologically, if we are hungry, we don't always make the healthiest choices because we just want food.
Yeah. And whatever tastes good,
whatever sounds good, we want. So sometimes even just going in and having a little bit of a game plan by looking at what's on the menu can just kind of help you stay on track when you're like, I'm so hungry, this sounds so good.
Right.
You kind of have an idea when you're going in ahead of time.
Absolutely. I think being smart about your side choices can be a great way to make that whole meal healthier as well. A lot of restaurants, instead of the fries or hash browns or whatever, you can get a side of fruit, or maybe a side salad, or even steamed broccoli or something like that. So that way you can enjoy whatever entree it is that you really wanted, but you can make that whole meal a little bit lower in salt by making some of those choices.
Yeah. Sometimes I have friends that are like, oh, I don't want the toast. Like, oh, I'll have the toast. So then they're kind of like sharing the different sides that may become. They're like, oh, I'm going to take that of yours and I'll take that.
Right, right. And it works for everyone.
It does.
Yes.
So I'm trying to think through if there's any other like tips or tricks that might be good to share with people in terms of just breakfast and options and ways to make something?
Trying to think of other some of my go-to breakfasts. I'm a big egg eater, and so a lot of my things that are coming to mind right now are eggs. I've really been into making frittatas, or sort of like egg bakes. So not a quiche, it doesn't have the crust, but doing an egg bake. And it's also a really great thing for when I have company. So I have some family and friends coming in to stay with me this weekend. So I'm planning on making a big, like 9x13 of mixed eggs and a whole bunch of vegetables in there, and then I can just throw it in the morning. So that's something that I like to do a lot as well.
Yeah, those are always kind of, those are good.
Easy.
Those are easy.
Yep.
What about someone who, I know we kind of said earlier about someone with, maybe the earlier stages of chronic kidney disease, and we're watching protein content.
Yes.
So how would we, maybe modify or kind of work on those portions to make that breakfast lower in protein, but still satisfying and still something that they'd want to eat?
Yeah. I think it's as far as the typical breakfast foods, you're probably okay with protein as long as you're not adding any protein powders or using any sort of like artificially type proteins. Having 1 to 2 eggs, or a half cup of tofu, or half cup of beans, quarter cup of nuts or seeds, like any of those things would easily fit in most people's daily protein needs if you have the early stages of CKD. Yeah, but as we've been talking about the whole time, you do want to make sure there's some protein. Sometimes patients feel that they can't eat any protein, which is not true, because you'll be starving and miserable if you don't have any protein.
Right.
So, yes.
And especially if you have diabetes. So I know with the newer recommendations coming out, it does talk about reducing protein, but those who have diabetes as well as kidney disease actually can have a little bit more protein.
That's a great point.
Than someone that doesn't have diabetes in those earlier stages, not on dialysis.
Yes, absolutely. We get our calories from 3 main sources, from protein and carbs and fat. So people with diabetes want to be moderate in how much carbohydrate they eat. And so if you are really, really restricting how much protein you eat, you're going to have to eat more carbohydrate.
Right.
So it's a good idea for people with diabetes to not be as strict with that protein restriction.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, let's get into our overnight oats recipe.
The fun part.
So we will put it up here so you can kind of see what we're making. So we've made a couple of modifications, and that's the really fun thing with overnight oats, is that you really just need like oats and a liquid.
Whole bunch of stuff.
And then everything
Whatever
else
you want.
is really just optional. It's kind of to your taste. So I like that a lot about it. So we did unfortunately forget the mini chocolate chips today.
But don't forget them at home.
forget them at home. And then we actually swapped out chia seeds for flax seeds, just that's what we had on hand. So, and of course that's an optional item anyways, but I know you had picked out this recipe, so anything else in there you wanted to point out or talk about?
No, I really love this recipe. I especially love that there's some nuts in there. I love nuts, and they are a great heart-healthy fat and a great way to get in fiber and plant-based protein. So you're really getting the protein in this meal from all plant-based sources, pretty much. You're getting some from the oats, a little from the milk. This one, I am using just plain skim milk today, but you can use 2% milk if you prefer, or you could use a plant-based milk if that's your jam. You can really choose whatever you want. And it's just such a fun way to get in your favorite ingredients, and again, use up whatever you have around the house.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
So let's go overhead and let's just take a look as we put this together. So I'm going to move we have a container that we can put it in. And so the one thing with the overnight oats too is that you don't, a lot of times you see them on Pinterest, and it's always in like, these really pretty mason jars, but it doesn't have to be.
No. I like to make mine in individual Tupperware-ish containers, so something just like this that I can throw together the night before, or even a couple nights before, and make a couple servings, and I can just grab in the morning and eat when I get to work. So yes, it's fun to make it in mason jars, but you certainly do not have to.
You don't have to.
All right. So we're going to start by putting in just 1 cup of oatmeal. Just dry oats. Whoa. Okay.
That's all right.
Okay. All right.
Just going to add to the visual appeal
Yes,
here.
right. Cooking is never nice and neat like we would like it to. And then
Yes,
we're
you
going to add 1 cup of milk. What kind of milk do you like to drink, Melissa?
I usually do skim milk. My
Me too.
boyfriend likes doing 2%.
So did you go with 1%? You could.
Sometimes we do. Yeah.
Yes.
Sometimes we do.
All right. So then we added just a cup of milk in there as well. Then we're going to add our 1 tablespoon of flax seeds. But again, you can use chia seeds or really use whatever you want in terms of seeds. Or not. You don't have to add this either.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll add that tablespoon.
And these are flax seeds that are already ground. So you
Yes.
can get ground ones, or you can just get the ones that are whole, and you can actually put them in like a spice grinder or your coffee grinder.
That's a great point.
You can put them in there too. And then we have frozen blueberries here, which is actually what I generally put in my overnight oats. Is I will actually put frozen fruit in there, and it thaws out throughout
Yes.
the evening when it's
Yeah.
in my fridge. But you can put fresh in there as well.
Frozen fruit is a great option. I feel like people tend to forget about.
Yeah.
It's cheaper. It doesn't go bad.
Right.
And available all year round. So that's a great option. I feel like the frozen fruit also is a little bit mushier,
Yes.
which in this way or this application works quite well, and it almost gives a blueberry flavor to the whole thing a little
Yep.
bit. So
Yep.
yeah, it's a great option.
So it's good to use in like yogurt.
That's another
As
great
well.
way.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Mango is my favorite fruit. I like to just buy the chunks and eat them frozen. It's almost like an ice
Like
cream
an ice
dessert.
cream.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. All right. So our last or second to last thing we're going to add is just a few walnuts here, and then we'll just sprinkle a little bit of cinnamon on top. All right. Yeah, we could stir it, or you could just shake it up.
I was like, I probably shouldn't like completely do it that way.
Yeah.
'Cause
Perfect.
do that. And then we have this,
Here we
maybe
go.
not very pretty on camera.
It's not very pretty, but I promise it's delicious. And when it sits overnight, the oatmeal is going to soak up all this liquid, so it won't.
Yep.
It'll look better in the morning as well.
Absolutely.
And it will be just like you made oatmeal, but with all this delicious stuff in there.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and I love it. I really do love overnight oats. I feel like that is a go-to breakfast for me more often than not because it's super easy to put together at night, and then I just take it with me to work in the morning.
So much more fun than regular oatmeal.
It really is. It is. So.
All right.
Well, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thanks, Melissa.
Any last tips that you wanted to share?
None that I can think of. Reach out to the National Kidney Foundation if you do have any questions. And yes, hopefully you enjoy your overnight oats.
Yes, and I will show you. We have our website. So let's let me get out of this, and I can pull up the website so you can see information about diet and nutrition. We have our videos are linked here on our website here, so you can get all different informations about eating well, living well, as well as links to other resources as well for you. So don't forget to check us out on our website. So,
All right.
well, thank you so much again
Thanks,
for being
everyone.
here, and thanks
Thanks,
for
Melissa.
watching, and we will see you next time.